Good afternoon, everyone. Today's video will be about why Professor Linetti is the best immunology professor at Florida International University. Huh? Wrong video? Today's video will be about cancer, thyroid cancer.
So when we talk about thyroid cancer, we're essentially talking about cancer that occurs in the thyroid gland. And so why is the thyroid gland super important? Well, the thyroid gland is super important to us, especially because it regulates things like heart rate and it controls things like blood pressure and especially body temperature. And it also has a role in controlling your weight or in terms of body weight. Now, what are the ways in which thyroid cancer is able to evade our immune system? So the first thing we look at is tumor-induced immune tolerance. So this is when there's chronic exposure to the cancer cells and it may lead to immune tolerance. So it's kind of like when a marathon runner gets exhausted. And so the immune system becomes less responsive to the cancer cells, and this can happen through various mechanisms, and it it involves the exhaustion of cytotoxic T cells. The next thing we look at is the expression of immune checkpoint molecules. So to me, it's kind of like missing a checkpoint in a car game. So this is Forza Horizon 5. And so one thing about this is that there's checkpoints in it. And when you miss a checkpoint, you're missing vital information. In the same way, there's cancer cells in the thyroid, and they express this thing. It's called PDL1. And so this interaction between PD-L1 and PD-1 on T cells can actually inhibit the activity of cytotoxic T cells, which prevents them from attacking the cancer cells effectively. And this basically evades the immune surveillance in our immune system. The next thing we look at is immune suppression in tumor microenvironment. So the microenvironment surrounding tumors, known as the tumor microenvironment, can sometimes be immunosuppressive. And so cancer cells may actually release factors that attract immune suppressive cells like Tregs, which we learned from class. And so these cells basically are able to inhibit the activity of effector immune cells that include cytotoxic T cells and suppress ultimately the anti-cancer immune response. Then we have immune evasion mechanisms. And so cancer cells, including the thyroid cancer cells, can develop mechanisms to evade recognition and attack by immune systems. But this is supposed to be interactive videos, so I'm going to pause it and I'm going to go onto my iPad and draw it out for you.
Hello again. So right now we're going to be looking at the immune evasion mechanisms that are performed from these cancer cells. So the first one that we're going to look at is the suppression of the MHC molecules. So in the first depiction here, we're going to see a normal cell and its MHC molecules, and that basically signals the B and T cells. So what do? We suppress that signal, and that essentially lets the body not even know what's going on with cancer cells. The second mechanism in which cancer cells use is when there's a cancer cell, we have a macrophage. And a macrophage is really big and scary, so I made it red. And so the macrophage engulfs the cancer cell and it breaks it down, and it'll use a MHC class 2 molecule to then present it. And what the cancer cell does, it actually takes what the molecule, the macrophage is presenting, and will pull it in. And so that's why it's highlighted in white there. And it's going to be inside the molecule itself. And so when it's hidden inside the molecule, the B and T cells that are supposed to be responding don't actually know. And the last mechanism that we will be discussing that cancer cells use to evade the immune system is the use of co-stimulatory molecules, or the need of it. And so what we discussed before is that cancer cells are actually able to lower the expression of the MHC molecules. So on top of that, whenever a cancer cell is binding to a cytotoxic T cell, that's actually what the TC stands for, it needs the TCR and the MHC molecules to come together. But on top of that, it needs actually something else called B7, and this is a co-stimulatory molecule. And that interacts with the CD28 receptor, and it's in blue, and it's really hard to read, so I'm sorry about that. But those two also go together, and that together releases the signal. So what the cancer cell does is it actually minimizes MHC molecules, and it lowers the expression of the B7.